My beloved child, don't rush past this. Not because a video controls your bank account. Not because Archangel Michael will punish you for leaving. But because the phrase, "a massive transaction was about to happen," touches something deeper than money. It touches expectation. It touches regret. It touches that private fear. What if I keep missing the right moment? And if you've ever looked back at an opportunity and thought, I should have paid more attention, then stay with this chapter. Because before it ends, we're going to separate two completely different things. A real opportunity you should investigate. And an urgent promise designed only to make you react. That difference can protect your future. Maybe you've been ignoring more than a message. Think about your life lately. Is there something you've postponed? A financial decision? A call? A document? An application? A conversation with your daughter? A bill you don't want to look at? A legitimate opportunity you keep telling yourself you'll examine later? Maybe the real mistake isn't that you skipped some spiritual video. Maybe the mistake is that you've built a habit of avoiding anything that feels uncomfortable. And avoidance has a cost. Not supernatural punishment. A practical cost. Bills grow. Deadlines pass. Relationships become distant. Opportunities move on. Questions remain unanswered. So perhaps the useful warning tonight is: don't ignore what genuinely deserves your attention. The bank notification. Imagine this. You're at home. The evening is ordinary. Your phone lights up. You see a transaction-related notification. Your heart immediately changes rhythm. It mentions a large amount. Not something you expected. You read it again. Then another line. Pending. Your first reaction. Excitement. Your second. Confusion. Who sent this? That's the right question. Because a large amount doesn't automatically mean a legitimate amount. You check the sender. You look at the wording. Something feels unusual. Then you see. Act immediately. Now you're alert. Don't let "too late" control you. The phrase, "before it's too late," can be powerful. It makes people feel that thinking itself is dangerous. But thinking is exactly what important financial situations require. If something real is happening, you can verify it. If an actual bank transaction exists, your bank can help confirm it. If a legitimate financial institution is involved, there should be documentation and official channels. And if someone wants an OTP, password, processing payment, remote access, or money to release money, stop. Urgency is not evidence. Remember that. Archangel Michael and discernment. For many believers, Archangel Michael symbolizes courage, protection, and standing firmly against deception. So maybe this is the message worth taking from his symbolism. Stand still long enough to see clearly. Not every battle is won by moving faster. Sometimes protection is, "I'll call the bank myself." Sometimes courage is, "No, I won't send a fee." Sometimes strength is, "I need more information." And sometimes wisdom is simply recognizing, "I desperately want this to be true, so I need to be extra careful." That's maturity. Comment your first word. If you've ever learned the hard way that rushing creates mistakes. Comment. Pause. Why pause? Not because it unlocks money. Let pause remind you. I will give important decisions enough time to make sense. The daughter who sees what you don't. Later that night. Your daughter walks into the room. She notices the phone. What's wrong? You say. Something financial. She sits down. What happened? You show her the message. She looks at the amount. Then immediately asks. Did you verify this? You smile. Not yet. She answers. Then we don't know anything yet. Simple. Direct. And exactly right. You say. But what if we miss it? She looks at you. Miss what? Something we haven't confirmed exists. That sentence stops you. Because fear had already made the money feel like yours. But it wasn't verified. That's how the mind works. First. What if this is real? Then. This could change everything. Then. I can't lose it. And suddenly. You emotionally own something before you have proof it exists. That's when judgment becomes vulnerable. So your daughter says. Let's slow this down. And together. You do. The official check. You don't use the phone number inside the questionable message. You independently contact your bank. You explain. I received information suggesting a significant transaction may be associated with my account. Can you confirm whether anything legitimate is pending? The representative checks. You wait. And the answer is less dramatic than the original message. There may be no confirmed transaction matching the claim. Or perhaps there is legitimate activity requiring normal verification. Either way. You now have facts. And facts are calmer than hype. The important part. Suppose nothing extraordinary is confirmed. Does that mean your life is finished? No. Does it mean God forgot you? No. Does it mean you missed your destiny because you didn't click fast enough? No. It simply means the claim needs to be treated for what it is. Unverified until verified. But then something else surfaces. This is where the story turns. While reviewing your finances, your daughter notices something legitimate. Not a mysterious massive transfer. An old account. A pending reimbursement. A forgotten benefit. A document that should have been followed up months ago. She asks. Did you ever call them about this? You look. You remember. No. Why? You shrug. I forgot. She laughs. You didn't forget. You avoided it. You know she's right. And suddenly. The phrase, don't repeat the mistake of ignoring this, has a completely different meaning. Not. Don't skip the video. But. Don't keep ignoring the real financial matters already sitting in front of you. The call you should have made months ago. The next morning. You call. A legitimate institution. No miracle language. No urgency. No giant promise. Just a normal conversation. You ask about the old matter. They look it up. There is something unresolved. Maybe not life-changing. But meaningful. Paperwork is required. You complete it. A week later. You receive confirmation. Something that had been delayed starts moving. Your daughter smiles. So. You answer. I should have done this months ago. She says. I know. You both laugh. That's the real lesson. Sometimes financial progress doesn't require a miracle. Sometimes it requires opening the letter, making the call, checking the account, filing the document, asking the question, following up. Those things feel ordinary. But ordinary action can unlock real results. Share this with someone who procrastinates. Think about someone you love. Someone who avoids bills. Someone who ignores official letters. Someone who gets anxious around money. Someone who keeps saying, "I'll deal with it later." Share this message with them. But don't frighten them. Tell them, "This reminded me not to avoid important financial stuff." That can genuinely help. The money cycle. Maybe your money cycle has been worry, avoid, delay, emergency, react, repeat. What if it became review, plan, act, follow up, protect, repeat? That's not glamorous. But that's how stability often grows. The family conversation. That evening, you and your daughter sit at the kitchen table. She asks, "What else have you been avoiding?" You laugh. "Do we have to do this?" "Yes." You pull out a folder. Old paperwork. You start reviewing. One document needs attention. Another is outdated. Something else should be organized. For the first time, you aren't ashamed of not having everything perfect. You're simply fixing what you can. That's progress. Faith and responsibility. If you're Christian, there's no conflict between prayer and responsibility. You can pray, "God, provide." And then review your budget. You can pray, "Open the right door." And then apply. You can pray, "Protect my family." And then be careful with financial messages. Faith can give you courage. Responsibility gives courage somewhere to go. Archangel Michael as protection. Think about Michael again. Maybe the protection you need isn't a supernatural shield around an imaginary transaction. Maybe it's the strength to say, "No more avoidance." That's powerful. Because avoidance can quietly cost years. The massive transaction question. Now let's imagine a genuinely large transaction were someday headed your way. Would you be ready? Would your documents be organized? Would you know who to call? Would you protect your privacy? Would you avoid announcing it immediately? Would you get appropriate financial, tax, or legal guidance? Would you make decisions calmly? If not, then preparation matters before abundance. Comment a second word. This time, comment follow through. Why? Because many people start. Fewer finish. Let follow through mean, if something matters, I will not abandon it halfway. The legitimate opportunity. Several weeks pass. A contact reaches out. They mention a real opportunity. No huge promise. No mysterious countdown. Just something that could help. Your first instinct is, "I'll think about it later." Then you catch yourself. Not again. So you ask questions. You get details. You verify the company. You examine the terms. You don't automatically accept. But you don't automatically ignore it either. That's balance. Sometimes the right door looks boring. This matters. Fake opportunities often try to look spectacular. Real opportunities may look ordinary. An interview. A contract. A conversation. A business introduction. A small project. A training course. The beginning may look too small to matter. But small doors can lead somewhere. Don't reject reality because fantasy looks more exciting. The one question that changes the next year. Your daughter asks, what if your next financial improvement doesn't arrive as a massive transaction? You think, what if it's something I build? She smiles. Exactly. That's the shift. Waiting becomes building. Fear becomes planning. Avoidance becomes action. Subscribe for the right reason. If these faith-centered stories help you stay motivated, think clearly, and take responsible steps. Subscribe. Not because subscribing guarantees money. Not because an angel requires it. Subscribe because you want more messages around faith, family, discernment, financial wisdom, and rebuilding. Share again, but with purpose. If someone you love is waiting for a breakthrough, share this with them. Say, don't ignore real opportunities while waiting for dramatic ones. That's a powerful message. The final hook. Months later. Something unexpected happens. The small opportunity you explored begins growing. A person notices your work. They offer something larger. This time, the amount is significant. Real. Verifiable. But there is a condition. One clause. One risk. And one decision. Your daughter reads the paperwork. Then says, this is exactly why you learned not to rush. And that's where the next chapter begins. Because now, the money is no longer imaginary. The opportunity is real. And wisdom matters more than ever. Your next part comment. If you want the continuation. Comment. Continue, follow through. Why? Because part 2 will reveal the clause. The real financial risk. And whether you're willing to walk away from good money if the terms are wrong. That is the true test of everything you've learned. Before you leave. Comment pause if you're choosing to think before reacting. Comment follow through if you're done avoiding what matters. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. And share this with someone who needs a reminder to stop postponing important financial decisions. Remember, you don't have to panic because something says, too late. You don't have to believe every large financial claim. You don't have to ignore everything either. You can investigate. You can verify. You can act. And sometimes, the real mistake isn't missing a miracle. It's ignoring the ordinary thing that actually needed your attention. Pause. Follow through. And if you want the next chapter, continue, follow through. Last, the real money finally appeared, and this time you could not afford to make the old mistake. My beloved child. This is the final chapter. And this time, the opportunity is not imaginary. There is no impossible number flashing on a screen. No mysterious release fee. No countdown telling you to panic. No stranger telling you, don't tell anyone. Instead, there is a legitimate offer. A real company. A real agreement. A real amount of money. And one real problem. Your daughter has just finished reading the paperwork. She puts the document down, looks at you, and says, "This can help us, but only if we understand what we're giving up." That sentence changes everything. Because for months, you've been learning not to ignore important things. Not to avoid. Not to panic. Not to let excitement make decisions for you. And now, life has given you the perfect test. Not whether you can recognize something fake. Whether you can stay wise when something good is actually real. The offer. The opportunity began small. A conversation. Then a project. Then another. You kept showing up. You followed through. You asked questions. You delivered. And eventually, somebody noticed. They said, "We'd like to offer you something larger." The amount was meaningful. Enough to change your monthly financial picture. Enough to help your family. Enough to make certain goals arrive much sooner than expected. You felt excited. Of course you did. But this time, you did not let excitement become agreement. You said, "Send me everything in writing." That one sentence showed how much you changed. The document. The agreement arrives. You print it. You and your daughter sit at the same kitchen table where everything began. Page 1. Good. Page 2. Responsibilities. Page 3. Compensation. Page 4. Timeline. Then page 5. Your daughter slows down. Reads one paragraph twice. Then asks, "What does this mean?" You read it. The language is dense. The clause could affect future work. Maybe exclusivity. Maybe ownership. Maybe termination. Maybe liability. Whatever the exact wording, you don't fully understand it. And that's enough reason to stop. The old voice returns. Immediately. Your mind whispers, "Don't ruin this. Don't ask too many questions. They'll give it to someone else. You've waited too long for something like this." There it is. The same fear of missing out. Different situation. Same emotion. But now, you recognize it. You say out loud, "Fear doesn't get to negotiate this contract." Your daughter smiles. Good. Break. Think about your own life. How many times have you accepted something because you were afraid there wouldn't be another chance? A job. A relationship. A financial commitment. A deal. A responsibility. Sometimes scarcity makes people accept terms they would question if they felt secure. That's why building stability matters. The more desperate you feel, the harder it becomes to say no. You get help. You take the agreement to someone qualified. You don't pretend. You say, "I need help understanding this." They review it. Then say, "This isn't necessarily bad, but I wouldn't sign it as written." You feel your stomach tighten. Why? They explain. One section creates more risk than you realized. Another needs clarification. A third could be negotiated. You write everything down. Then you call the company. The conversation. You say, "I'd like to discuss several terms." The person answers, "Of course. That matters." No anger. No threat. No. You have 60 seconds. You discuss the first issue. Then the second. Then the third. They explain their position. You explain yours. Some terms remain. Some are revised. One is removed. The process takes days. Not minutes. And nothing disappears because you asked questions. Real opportunities can survive scrutiny. Remember that. Your daughter asks the hard question. After the call, she asks, "What if they refuse the final change?" You answer, "Then I have to decide whether the money is worth the risk." She looks at you carefully. Then asks, "Are you willing to walk away?" You hesitate. Because this is not fake money. You could actually lose a real opportunity. That's harder. Finally, you say, "If the terms are wrong, yes." And there it is. The lesson is complete. The power to say no. Financial freedom isn't only being able to buy things. Sometimes it's being able to say, "I don't need this badly enough to accept something I don't understand." That's power. Because desperate yes can become expensive. And wise no's can protect years. The final version. 2 days later. The revised agreement arrives. You read it. Your daughter reads it. Your advisor reviews it. The major concerns have been addressed. You understand what you're agreeing to. You understand the risks. You understand the compensation. You understand what happens if things go wrong. Now, you can make an informed choice. Your daughter asks, "Ready?" You smile. "Now I am." You sign. No fireworks. Nothing dramatic happens. That's important. No angel appears. No bank balance suddenly explodes. No supernatural countdown disappears. You simply start. And now, the real work begins. The first month is not easy. You struggle. You make mistakes. You ask questions. One day, you come home exhausted. Your daughter asks, "How was it?" You say, "I think I made a mistake accepting this." She doesn't panic. She asks, "What happened?" You explain. She listens. Then asks, "Is the entire opportunity bad, or was today bad?" You stop. That's a different question. You say, "Today was bad." She nods. Then don't turn one bad day into a final verdict. That's wisdom too. Month 3. Something shifts. You understand the work better. You make fewer mistakes. People trust you. Someone asks for your advice. Then another person does. You realize. The thing you almost rejected because of fear is becoming something you can actually grow into. But notice the difference. You didn't accept because somebody frightened you. You accepted because you investigated. That's healthy risk. The first financial result. A few months later. You reach one of your goals. Maybe you clear a debt. Maybe you build an emergency cushion. Maybe you finally repair something in the house without anxiety. Maybe you improve savings. The exact number is not spectacular. But the feeling is. You look at the result and think. This is real. Not promised. Not imagined. Built. That word matters. Built. Because real financial progress is often built. One decision. One opportunity. One lesson. One adjustment. 1 month. Then another. Archangel Michael and courage after success. If Michael represents courage in your faith, remember this. Courage isn't needed only when you're struggling. You need courage when things improve too. Courage to stay disciplined. Courage to say no to lifestyle inflation. Courage to avoid showing off. Courage to protect privacy. Courage to help wisely instead of emotionally. Courage to remain humble. Success creates temptations too. The second offer. A year later. Another offer arrives. More money. More responsibility. This time. You don't automatically become excited. You use the same process. Verify. Read. Ask. Compare. Think. Pray. Decide. That's when you realize. You no longer need panic to feel motivated. You have a process. Your money cycle really did change. Old cycle. Ignore. Worry. Delay. React. Regret. Repeat. New cycle. Notice. Verify. Understand. Act. Review. Improve. Repeat. That's a real shift. Comment your final word. 4. This last chapter. Comment. Decide. Why decide? Because your future isn't shaped only by what comes to you. It's shaped by what you do with what comes. Let decide mean. I will make important choices from clarity, not pressure. Not a magic word. Not a money claim. A reminder. Share this message. Think about someone you love. Someone who keeps ignoring financial problems. Someone who rushes into opportunities. Someone who gets overwhelmed by paperwork. Someone who wants change but is afraid to ask questions. Share this with them. Tell them. You don't have to rush. Just don't keep avoiding what deserves attention. That message can actually help. Subscribe for the right reason. If you want more faith-centered stories about family, rebuilding, financial wisdom, discernment, and courage, subscribe. Not because subscribing creates a blessing. Not because skipping blocks one. Subscribe because you want more conversations that encourage hope without fear. The final family scene. One evening. You sit at the kitchen table again. Your daughter brings coffee. She looks around. Then says, "It's weird." What? This is the same table where you used to sit worrying about money. You laugh. "I still worry sometimes." She smiles. "I know. But you don't hide from it anymore. You become quiet." That's true. You still have responsibilities. Unexpected expenses still happen. Life is still life. But fear no longer owns the entire room. She asks, "What changed?" You think. Then answer, "I stopped believing that ignoring something would make it easier." That's the answer. The massive transaction from the beginning. Remember the title? A massive transaction was about to happen. Don't ignore. Open before it's too late. Now perhaps the useful interpretation is clearer. Don't ignore. Real bills. Real documents. Real opportunities. Real warning signs. Real conversations. Real responsibilities. Not because an angel will punish you. Because reality rewards attention more than avoidance. Your faith doesn't need panic. If you're Christian, remember, you can pray without fear. You can ask God for guidance. You can believe that circumstances can improve. But you don't need to treat every financial message as divine instruction. You can use discernment. You can ask questions. You can take time. You can seek counsel. Faith isn't weakened by wisdom. Final prayer. If you'd like, pray. God, help me notice what deserves my attention. Give me courage to face what I've been avoiding. Protect my family from financial deception. Help me recognize legitimate opportunities. Give me wisdom to read carefully, ask questions, and make responsible decisions. And when good opportunities come, help me carry them with humility. Amen. The final message. Don't repeat the old mistake. Not skipping a video. The old mistake was avoiding what made you uncomfortable. Don't ignore the letter. Don't ignore the bill. Don't ignore the legitimate opportunity. Don't ignore warning signs. Don't ignore your family's concerns. Don't ignore the need for professional advice. Don't ignore the possibility that you can still learn. And don't let urgency make you reckless. The goal is not act fast. The goal is pay attention early enough that you don't have to panic later. That's completely different. Comment. Decide. If you're choosing clarity over avoidance, share this with someone who needs that reminder. Subscribe if you want more faith-centered motivational stories like this. And remember, a real opportunity can wait long enough for you to understand it. A real problem becomes easier to address when you stop hiding from it. And your future doesn't need one miraculous transaction to become different. Sometimes, it needs one person to finally say, I'm going to deal with what is actually in front of me. That person can be you. Decide. The end.